well as the energy sector in India. We are today the fourth largest, capacity we have for refining in the world, only after the US, China, and Russia. The current capacity is about 250 million tons per annum refining capacity. There are over 23 refineries in India, 18 of them in the public sector, and the rest either private or in joint ventures. And there are several other refineries coming up and planned in the near future. We also know that, Indian Oil Corporation is the largest refiner in India with capacity of over 70 million tons per annum. Of course, Reliance has the world's single largest refining capacity at a single location in the world today. And between IOC, BPC, HPC, Reliance, and the other big refineries, they almost contribute about 75 to 80% of the entire refining capacity and the refined products that are produced and sold in India and also exported. Since the year 2001, when we saw some kind of a deficit in the refining capacity, this sector has seen a very spectacular growth in the last 20 years or so. And we are now one of the major exporters of refined products across the world. And if we take the year 1920 as a representative one, because 2021 and thereafter there's been a COVID impact, the production of refined products in that year was around 263 million tons. And the domestic consumption was around 214, 215 million tons. We have also witnessed annual average growth of over 5% in terms of the refining capacity in the last 10 years or so. And the projections are that going forward, India is likely to contribute about 15% of Asia's crude oil refining capacity by the year 2023. And we will be able to process around 6.5 million barrels of oil per day. That's the kind of refining capacity that is there and is coming up. If we look at the world scenario, the short-term outlook, we have witnessed, uncertainties relating to the COVID, and there are ongoing recoveries in terms of both production as well as the demand. We've seen continuous economic growth in the recent past in spite of COVID, and also we are witnessing increased mobility in spite of the pandemic. So all this in terms of projections by the US EIA as well as International Energy Agency suggests that the demand of finished products is only going to increase in the near future. And with the crude prices prevailing around $70, $71 a barrel in August, and the expectations of some of the agencies is that they are likely to remain around the current level in the next couple of months during this year. So, there is a likely growth of production, which the OPEC has also projected, and some non-OPEC producers are also likely to produce more, but the demand is also likely to go up. Similarly, this will augur well for the E&P industry, and going forward, if increased rig additions, etc., are some indications, even the production is likely to go up. And the entire ecosystem of the industry is likely to grow. Consumption, which is around 98 million barrels per day, is expected to cross 100 million barrels a day, over the next year or so. That is the expectation. Also, downstream product prices like gasoline, has looked up, and beyond the taxation, I think it is more reflection of the robust, demand supply situation, as well as the better margins that probably the producers may be looking at or expecting during the short term. Similarly, demand of propane, butane, etc. is also going up, and the production is also likely to grow in the near future. On an average, the refining capacity utilization across the world has been around 78% in the recent past. But in India, I think it has looked up and it's close to 90%. So that augurs well for the refining sector in India. Now coming to the petrochemicals, which is the other theme for this conclave. If we look at the petrochemical sector, refining feedstock constitutes about 12% of the feedstock that is used for production of petrochemicals across the world today. And the use and demand of plastics and petrochemicals is only growing. Therefore, going forward, this 12% number will only grow, and refineries will look more and more towards, petrochemical being the end product rather than the other finished products, refined products in the mid to long-term period. So therefore, refineries will increasingly look at petrochemicals as an end demand center and the option for growth going forward. If we look at the long-term outlook or medium-term outlook, should I say, there are a certain set of challenges that are there before the refining sector, and they will have to face these challenges squarely. These will come in terms of technological advancements that they would require to be made in terms of increasing efficiency, reducing emissions, environmental concerns, and sustainability issues which are there across the world. Also, a lot of stringent and evolving regulations are happening across the world by various government agencies. And these regulatory requirements will have to be met by the refining sector going forward, whether they are existing refineries or the ones which are coming up. And then, of course, the increased concerns about climate change and the talk and the urge and the commitment of various nations towards transitioning to a low carbon economy by the year 2050. And many economies have already set targets for that. So the refining sector will have to gear ourselves up to meet these challenges. Of course, the global liquid demand will continue to rise in the near future, as I said, short term to medium term. But in order to be prepared for the future, the refining industry has to be looking forward to find solutions to all these challenges that are there before it. And once it's able to meet all these challenges, there is a very bright future for the refining and the petrochemical sector. So thank you, and thank you, PhD Chamber, for giving me an opportunity to share my views. Thank you. Dr. Jitendra Singh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Thank you very much indeed. It was very, very informative. And your talk on the sustainability part, I think that is the most important thing at this point in time, because since we are focusing on the circular economy and also the sustainable development, which actually emphasizes the need for a more holistic manufacturing policies, and petrochemical sector, works that focuses on development of waste, land, and also, the producers, they need to focus on the carbon dioxide capture, also on the zero discharge plants and improving plastic recycling facilities. Thank you very much, sir. Now with this, I'll request our president, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, president of PhD Chamber of Commerce Industry, to kindly give the presidential address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jitendra Singh. Mr. Tarun Kapoor, the Honorable Secretary of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Ms. Rukmani Riyad Sihag, the Executive Director of RICO, Mr. Rajiv Bathur, President Oil and Gas Care India, Mr. Pawan Tibrewala, the Co-Chair of Hydrocarbon Committee, PhD Chamber, members of the Managing Committee, past presidents, senior officers from the central and state governments, colleagues from the industry, friends from the media, and distinguished dignitaries present here today. A very warm welcome to you all. India is expected to be one of the largest contributors to non-OECD petroleum consumption growth globally. The crude oil import rose sharply to US $101 billion in 29-20 from US $71 billion approximately in 2016-17. As of June 1st, 2021, the sector's total installed provisional refinery capacity stood at roughly 250 million metric tons. And the IOC emerged as the largest domestic refiner with a capacity of 70 million metric tons. The COVID-19 pandemic has had far-reaching economic consequences beyond the spread of the disease itself and the efforts to quarantine it. The responses to the pandemic have resulted in global social and economic disruption, including the largest global recession since the Great Depression. History shows that the periods of crisis, disruptions, and subsequent future uncertainties are often the most forceful catalysts of structural change. For refining companies that has which have historically witnessed demand deviations from within very narrow ranges, the emerging patterns and the long-term outlooks on energy demand are truly shape-shifting. The permanent shifts in the industry's ecosystem means that the rules of the next normal will be pretty arduous. Faced with these unprecedented challenges that threaten their financial and physical resilience, refining companies will need an entirely new DNA to prepare for the opportunities and threats in the new world that lies ahead once the immediate crisis is past. A knee-jerk reaction would only cause a multi-billion-dollar error. The refining industry is undergoing critical restructuring at present. Firstly, the configurations are continuously changing due to even more stringent environmental regulations and stress on cleaner fuels. The refineries are now changing from middle distillate maximization to light distillate maximization, also being a primary feed provider. Refineries are forward integrating with high-value petrochemicals to maximize bottom lines while utilizing last available useful molecule to a value-added product. India has faced a deficit in supply of olefins in the recent past due to the focus of manufacturers being on high-margin polyolefins. But the scenario is expected to change by FY25 with the launch of new petrochemical capacities. The per capita consumption of chemicals in India is 1/10 of the global average. This leaves headroom for further penetration, which is expected to be mainly driven by local consumption. Both refiners and domestic petrochemical players are expanding their petrochemical capacities. Reliance and IOCL have already expanded their petrochemical production in the past couple of years. Domestic players such as Deepak Phenolics and ONGC Petro Additions Limited have entered into petrochemical space recently. International players have also announced partnerships to enter the Indian pharmaceutical petrochemicals market. Over the past 3 years, global firms such as Saudi Aramco, Rosneft, Bayara, and others have announced plans to invest in Indian petrochemical manufacturing. The West Coast refinery is being planned as a joint venture between Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, Saudi Aramco, IOCL, BPCL, and HPCL. The petrochemical industry has enormous opportunities to aid the circular economy by implementing effective designs, reuse, recovery, recycling, and upcycling. India is taking responsible and strong steps towards achieving sustainable environmental and climate goals. The Indian chemical sector has a large network of 200 national laboratories and 1,300 R&D centers and has a strong potential to drive further innovation. The sector as an opportunity to leverage its human talent pool and attain a dominant position. Furthermore, with recent revisions in the basic customs duties of NAFTA, petrochemical and chemical intermediates, further traction in investments is expected in the coming years for Indian petrochemical sector. This sector could be one of the leading sectors in achieving PM Shri Narendra Modi ji's vision of making India a $5 trillion economy. With this note, I'd like to extend my warm greetings to all those participating in today's conclave and wish it a great success. And I look forward to hearing the eminent and distinguished speakers after me. Thank you and Jai Hind. Over to you, Dr. Jitendra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for laying the foundation of this very, very important and pertinent conclave. And you mentioned most of the points, which are definitely one of the important aspects in terms of understanding the nuances of this sector. Thank you very much, sir. Now with this, I would like to invite Ms. Rukmani Riyar Sihak, IAS, Executive Director, RICO, and Additional Commissioner, Investment and NRIs, Bureau of Investment Promotion, Government of Rajasthan. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India, other distinguished speakers, entrepreneurs and delegates. Thank you very much for giving Rajasthan an opportunity to share our experiences in this sector. Rajasthan is at the threshold of turning into an important petrochemical and petroleum destination in the country. We are a prominent location on the world map of hydrocarbon reserves and production. In my address to the conclave, I shall like to briefly describe Rajasthan as an investment opportunity in this sector and discuss in detail about the steps that we have taken as a state to move ahead in this area. Oil and gas sector is among the 8 core industries in India. The nature has given Rajasthan rich mineral wealth, and we are the first position in onshore drilling by production, about 1/4 of country's crude oil. Rajasthan has significant resources and potential in hydrocarbons under 4 petroliferous basins. Due to hydrocarbon, prospectively, 3 petrophilous basins of Rajasthan have been upgraded into category 1, that is equivalent to Bombay High, Assam and Gujarat. These 4 basins fall in the 14 districts of our state out of the 33, which is nearly half of the area of the state. The districts are Badmer, Jaisalmer, Bikaner, Sri Ganganagar, Hanumangarh, Jalore, Jodhpur, Kota, Jhalawar, Bara, Bundi, Bhilwara, Churu, Chittorgarh, spread over an area of 150,000 square kilometers. Hence, we have an opportunity which is very high in upstream, midstream, and downstream hydrocarbon sector. 38 oil and gas fields have been discovered in the Badmer-Sanchor basin. Mangla oil discovery of this basin has been rated as one of the biggest discoveries of the onshore in the last 20 years of our country's history. Out of the total 768 lakh metric tons of crude oil have been produced from this basin from August 2019 to March 2020. Rajasthan produces natural gas and also heavy oil resources. Natural gas and oil companies of reputed multinational and private companies are largely engaged in our state and currently in operation. To process its massive reserves of crude oil in the state, greenfield refinery cum petrochemical complex with 9 MMTPA capacity and 2.4 MMTPA petrochemical products is being set up by HPCL Rajasthan Refinery Limited in Pachpadra in Badmer, which is expected to be commissioned in March of 2024. The products which we will get out of this refinery are polypropylene, butadiene, benzene, toluene, LLP-DPE, HDPE. Rajasthan is also establishing a PCPIR in the vicinity of this refinery, and this complex of our industrial setup will be only 16 to 17 kilometers from refinery in distance. PCPIR at the doorstep will help in adopting just-in-time management of raw material, and this will lower the raw material inventory and reduce cost of carrying raw material inventory and mitigate the risk of fluctuation in the prices of raw materials. The PCPIR in Rajasthan will be India's only PCPIR to be located in the hinterland. It is proposed to have an area of 383 square kilometers spread over 33 villages and 1 town. It will have 157 square kilometers of processing area and about 226 kilometers of non-processing area. While the investment in the refinery has been estimated to be about 43,129 crore, investment to the tune of 3,500 crore towards utility and support infrastructure costs and social and commercial investment is anticipated in PCPIR by 2020. We have submitted our application of PCPIR to Government of India and we are expected its approval very soon. As part of PCPIR, our Burawas Kalawas area that is being developed nearby has an area of about 715 hectare land and the allotment of which has already begun. We have identified 2,000 hectares of land for PCPIR. This will present number of options before the entrepreneurs for the location, including projects at large land lake and large capacity cement plants, fertilizer plants, etc. RICO has developed number of sector-specific industrial areas and zones. RICO has developed the country's first country-specific zone of Japanese SEZ in Neemrana. The experience that we've gained over the years will be reflected in better planning of our PCPIR. Our industrial areas in this zone have been our practice to avail and give the best infrastructure to all the enterprises that decide to set up their industries in RICO's industrial area. Rajasthan's PCPIR is very strategically located to the markets of northern and western India. It is falling in the influence zone of Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor and it has access to the dedicated western freight corridor. It will thus facilitate movement of materials from and to the ports of the western India. Amritsar and Jamnagar 6-lane expressway is also adjacent to this area where PCPIR and its industrial area is being developed by the state of Rajasthan. It has easy road access to the ports of the western area of our country, and besides investment opportunities in the industrial area, it will also provide opportunities of venturing into social, service, educational and commercial sector. Chemical sector, petrochemical sector and petroleum ancillaries are amongst the thrust sectors in the Rajasthan's investment scheme of 2019, where the industries are eligible for incentives of investment of equal to and above 10 crores. For any investment which is above 100 crores, a special team at the level of Chief Secretary of the state is set up to decide and give incentives to our industries so that their transition into the state and setup is easy and without any glitch. Rajasthan is known for its entrepreneurship. Most of the big industrial houses in the country are present here. We as a state are known for our hospitality and friendly people. The law and order position in Rajasthan is very peaceful. There have been no major incidents of any labor unrest in our state, and we are proud to share that with all the panel members present here today. We're also proud to state that the state of Rajasthan enjoys best industrial relationships in the country, and we are also a power surplus state and have no power cuts, which is also an incentive for more industries to come and settle and set up their enterprises here. We've always been sensitive to our entrepreneurs, and we have ease of doing business reforms, and number of our policies like the MSME Act and RIPS Act of 2019 to give more incentives to the investors who come into the state of Rajasthan. RICO, the Industrial Infrastructure Development Agency of the Rajasthan, has developed more than 360 industrial areas over the few years of our existence. And it's my privilege to announce on this platform that in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll be establishing 100 more industrial areas across the length and breadth of the state of Rajasthan. I, through this conclave, call upon the industry facility to come forward to set up their industries in the PCPIR region, which is being set up by the state of Rajasthan. I also invite you all to our investment meet and the summit, which will be happening in the month of January 2022. And through this platform, I would like to once again thank you all for giving us this opportunity to project Rajasthan in the sector of petrochemicals, and assure you that state of Rajasthan in the coming years will be pioneer of all the other states in this country in this sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man, for sharing your perspective. In fact, and the PCPIR is emerging as one of the lucrative investment destinations in petrochemicals and also ancillary industries because of advantages of location, connectivity, resources, as well as policy incentives. And also the early commencement of work on PCPIR, actually it is giving investors adequate time before operations or refinery actually commence from the next year. And I'm
Sure.
sure that if its full potential is exploited, it will create immense jobs as well as business opportunities. Thank you very much, man, for sharing your perspective. Thank you. With this, now I'd like to invite our chief guest for the inaugural address, Mr. Tarun Kapoor, IAS, Honorable Secretary of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Over to you, sir. Acha. I got a call. Actually, there's some connectivity issue. He's joining in another 1 minute's time. Let us wait for a minute or so. Yeah. Meanwhile, there's a question we can ask our expert, Mr. Pawan Tibrewala, and ma'am also. There's a question that how is the impact of solar power and climate change action? What will be the impact on refinery production and expansion? Pawan sir, if you can reply this question. And we have President also present, sir. Can you throw some light on this in terms of the impact of solar power and climate change on refinery production and petrochemical sectors? Now we have also green hydrogen coming in. Do you think that it will impact the petrochemical and or fossil fuels industry? Please unmute, sir.
Oh, sorry. You see, to my mind, there will be definitely a plateauing of demand for hydrocarbon energy. That should happen. And excuse me. Hello. Okay. But there's no immediate, I would see any immediate downturn in the demand. I think it's the growth rather would be affected in a way. And it should be a long-term secular trend, of course, for the petrochemical demand to go down. Not in the immediate, let's say 2, 3 years, 4 years, probably it's not going to happen. That's my view, and I could be wrong.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Tarun Kapoor, if you are able to join, we're waiting for you.
There must be some technical issue because I think we are seeing the secretary's name on 2 or 3 panelists, but probably there is some technical issue. Could you talk to him, somebody on
Yes, sir. He's saying there's some connection issue. He is able to listen to us, but not able to switch on his video. I just had a word with him, sir. It is yes. So what I will do, I'll send him the direct, that panelist link.
Please send him a different link.
Yes.
And sir, may I request you to kindly re-enter, exit and re-enter maybe.
Yes, yes. There's a question for you, ma'am, Rukmani ma'am, that how the water demand will satisfy in Rajasthan for industrial development and particularly in petrochemicals is what is one of the issues. Yeah, please go ahead.
The state government has explored its options through the Indira Gandhi Canal, which is in that area. Also, we have a few power plants which are in that area, which will be closing in the next 2-3 years. So the allocation of water that was given to the power plants will be now diverted for our requirements of the PCPIL.
Okay, thank you. So we are joined with Honorable Secretary, Mr. Tarun Kapoor. Sir, over to you. Thank you for joining, sir.
Sir, good morning and thank you for organizing this and thank you for inviting me. This is regarding refining and petrochemicals. So India, as on today, is one of the largest refining hubs in the world. Our own requirement is huge. So our capacity today is enough to fulfill our requirement. But then today we stand at some 249 million metric tons capacity per annum capacity. Honorable Prime Minister has already announced that we will take this capacity to 450 million metric tons, and we will become a hub for this region, not only for India but for the region. Now, if we look at refining, then there are several products which are produced from crude. So far, we've been concentrating on diesel. So we've been trying to maximize diesel production. And second product for us has been petrol. We've not really been concentrating on petrochemicals. We've also not been concentrating on certain other products like, say, LPG or naphtha, which then goes into production of petrochemicals. We've also been using naphtha in certain cases for power generation or for such uses which may not be so important or economically so viable. If you look at all the refineries which are located in the country as on today, some are owned by the government oil majors, oil companies, the big ones, that is IOCL, BPCL and HPCL. And two large private sector companies are there, Reliance, and then we have Naira. And on the other side, we also have some smaller government companies like MRPL and CPCL. So these are some standalone refineries also. So now, in order to understand how this sector is currently behaving, we'll have to look at the private sector, we'll have to look at all these sectors. And what we find is that in the private sector, Reliance is using petrochemicals in a big way. Some the newer ones are 26% petrochemical. Older refineries have just 4% petrochemicals. And the ones which are now coming up in the government sector are at around, say, 10% or so. Now, looking forward, the whole requirement of the country is undergoing a major change. Diesel demand is not going up. Rather, if we look at the current demand, diesel is at some 7-8% below the pre-COVID levels. Petrol has gone 4% above the pre-COVID levels. So petrol requirement has gone up. LPG requirement has gone up tremendously. So our refineries are not producing enough LPG. We have to import 55% of our LPG. And on petrochemicals, again, we have net importers. So huge imports are coming as far as petrochemicals are concerned. So which means that going forward, the refining configuration will have to be different. So these new refineries which we are planning, expansions which we are planning, they will have to have a slightly different configuration. Some refineries are already under construction, like the HPCL large refinery, 9 million metric tons coming up in Barmer, and also expansion of the refinery in Bombay, and certain other refineries also which are undergoing expansion. So, and then we are also looking at a very large refinery, West Coast refinery, which would be biggest in the world. So all these new upcoming refineries will have to have slightly different configuration, and with that we will have to build petrochemical units also attached to refineries in order to keep the cost low and keep the viability high. Viability is also a bit of a challenge right now for refineries because cracks are down. They were very low, but now they've gone up slightly, but not at the level where one could say that refineries become very profitable. But generally speaking, one could just say that refining going forward is going to be a very complicated business. It will have to undergo a change, and we will have to match the requirements of the market in the country. But nevertheless, we want investments to come in this sector because there is demand, there is market available, but market is not available for the conventional products like diesel. That market may not grow, but there will be very good market for petrochemicals. Even today, there is a shortage of, say, polypropylene and certain other products. So private sector investment is also required for petrochemicals and for all the downstream chain of various products. And we also want to spread this out throughout the country and not just concentrate in a few areas so that we are closer to the market. So that's the plan. So thank you very much.
You are on mute, Mr. Singh.
Unmute, Sanjay sir, please unmute. I think Mr. Sanjay Agarwal is asking something. Sir, please if you can unmute. Sir, if you can unmute, please. Mr. Sanjay Agarwal. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, with this, I'd like to invite Mr. Pawan Tiprawala for his concluding remarks and vote of thanks. And Mr. Pawan Tiprawala is the co-chairman of our Hydrocarbon Committee at PhD Chamber of Commerce Industry. Over to you, Mr. Pawan.
Mr. Tarun Kapoor, Secretary, Petroleum and Gas. Mr. Rukmani Riyar Sihag, IAS Executive Director, RICO. Mr. Rajiv Mathur, President, Oil and Gas, Cairns, India. Dr. Jatinder Singh, Director. Members of the Managing Committee, past presidents, senior officers from the central government and state government, colleagues from the friends from the media, and distinguished dignitaries present here. For the PhD Chamber, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to Shri Tarun Kapoor, Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum and Gas, for sparing his valuable time to address the gathering here today. I would also like to thank Mrs. Rukmani Nair Sihag, Director RICO, and Mr. Rajiv Mathur, President Oil and Gas, Cairns, India, for taking the time out and valuable views in this enclave. I also propose a heartfelt thanks to all the speakers for their gracious presence at the virtual conclave today. I take this opportunity to extend gratitude to the other delegates, distinguished participants, and the learned guests for participating at the event. We at PhD Chamber assure you of our commitment towards working closely with the government, institutions, and all the stakeholders of the industry for a better India. With these words, I want to thank all the eminent dignitaries and all the distinguished participants for their presence on this platform today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Tibravala. In fact, indeed, it was a very knowledgeable session, and the Secretary Sir has given a lot of insights in terms of what is actually happening in this sector and what are the future prospects. And also we got a lot of insights from Madam Rukmani Sehag also in terms of how Rajasthan government is actually, making headways in making us as one of the important states in petrochemical and refinery sector. Thank you very much indeed. And with this, now we conclude our first session. We now start with our panel discussion and session on the future of refineries and petrochemicals. We have our session chair, Dr. Sao. He is the Executive Director at Refining Technology, Indian Oil Corporation. And the other panelists are Mr. Sanjay Papneja, General Manager Technical, Indian Oil Corporation, Mr. Vipin Gupta, Managing Director, Trenchless Engineering Private Limited, Mr. Gaurav Gupta, Associate Director, Chemicals and Petro, PwC, and Mr. Prashant Vashisht, Vice President, Co-Group Head, Corporate Ratings, ICRA Limited. So without any further ado, I'll request Mr. Sao to kindly take over this session and kindly start the session with his own deliberations in terms of what is the future, what holds future for petrochemicals and refinery sector. Over to you, Mr. Madhusudan, Dr. Madhusudan Sao. Thank you. Yeah, please unmute. Dr. Saab, please unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Singh. Dear delegates, for the National Refining and Petrochemical Conclave 2021. Now the panel discussion theme is Future of Refineries and Petrochemical. As you know, this global refining industry is going through a very turbulent phase in view of various factors. I mean, it starts from crude oil price, then emission policies by the various government, then demand pattern change, then reduction of CO2, emergence of disruptive technologies like EVs. So each impact is affecting our business very severely. Now in the past century, if you see the refining industry, so there all energy was put in to derive the benefit of crude oil in terms of liquid yields and how the refinery configurations can be continuously be upgraded to have this, maximum GRM improvement. And only 10% of the chemical potential of the crude oils was realized in the last century. So now crude oil is need to be, see the other avenue, like a crude oil to chemicals is one of the very important aspects in the days to come. And we need to increase the petrochemical intensity from the current level of 10% to as high as like a 30-40% in the future. To unleash this huge potential, molecular management of the crude oil is very important. So, type of defining different niche products and the petrochemical feedstocks. So that will be very important. Now, to deliberate on this future of refineries and petrochemical, so we have our 4 eminent speakers in the panel. Now, these various aspects will be deliberated. Now, we have this technology user, Mr. Sanjay Papneja from our company is a GM IOCL. So he has an experience in the refining. He was spearheading several new projects and initiatives in the petrochemical industry. So he will be covering Indian Oil's perspective on the petrochemical. Then followed by our engineering aspects will be presented by Mr. Vipin Gupta, is MD in Trenchless Engineering. So that's an industry leader in construction engineering and has been involved in horizontal drilling and is a major player in the field of pipeline installation. Followed by technology trend that is very important today, and that will be deliberated by Saurabh Gupta. He's an associate director in PwC. And like a PwC helps in government agencies in attracting investment, promoting competition, protecting consumer interest, and introducing new technologies. And they, I'm sure he will be covering some compliance across the globe in both refining and petrochemical. And finally, to provide the guidance and information to the companies to access this capital and money market and providing projections to helping investors. We have Mr. Prashant Basist, who is a vice president and co-head in the ICRA Limited. Now, with this, I would request each speaker to complete the talk by 15 minutes. And at the end, like we'll have about 25 minutes to have a open platform to have a question, answers, and deliberations. Yeah. So with this, may I request Mr. Sanjay Papneja, GM IOCL, to make the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. In fact,
Good morning.
you have rightly mentioned, Dr. Saud, that we need to increase our petrochemical intensity index from current level. If we see the Indian GDP growth, it is set to grow beyond 7.5% or so. And historically, we have seen that petrochemical consumption is about 1.3 to 1.5 times of our GDP. So that means it is set to grow in 2-digit growth. And this trend is expected to follow for next about 15 to 20 years. So that means that India as a whole present a very bright landscape as far as the petrochemical demand supply deficit is concerned. And this makes the Indian market very attractive from the perspective of new proposal of petrochemical project, as well as inviting investment from abroad to India. If we look at that, if we only look at the top 50 petrochemical import value in 2020, it was at about 63,000 crores. Now, if we see the projection till 2040, this 63,000 crore is expected to go beyond 3,85,000 crores. I mean, this is a whooping amount. If we do not add to petrochemical capacities, our import of petrochemical is going to continuously increase year by year. If we see the data by ICIS, projection in 2040, total projection of petrochemical is about 104 MMTP, consumption of petrochemical. And if we account for our existing and projected capacity of about 49 MMTPA, that means we are left with a very large deficit of about 55 MMTP. So this requires rigorous investment in this segment to ensure that vision of Make in India becomes a reality. And from internal perspective, if we see our current petrochemical intensity index is about 4 to 5%. If we see that all 9 refineries operation altogether, and we certainly have a target to increase it to beyond 15%. And currently we are producing about 3.2 MMTP of total petrochemical, and we already have an approved plan in place worth about 32,000 crores. So we'll be adding another 2.7 MMTP in next 4 years. So our total petrochemical production will be around about 6 to 7 MMTPA. Now, even if we talk of recyclate and single-use plastic ban, so by 2040 we can say that single-use plastic ban as well as recyclate altogether will be accounting for not more than 10 MMTP of equivalent polymer reduction, consumption reduction. So in spite of recyclate and single-use plastic, we can say we are left with a whooping demand of about 45 MMTP. So that way, it's required to continuously expand the capacity in petrochemicals, and that is what Indian Oil is aiming at. And we are set to increase our petrochemical intensity index in coming years. Thank you.
Yeah, you are done, Mr. Papneja?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we'll go to Mr. Bipin Gupta. I think we'll take at the end.
So Mr. Gupta and Mr. Gaurav are trying to join in. Meanwhile, we have Mr. Prashant sir with us.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Prashant. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I can. Do you want me to give a brief presentation? I have a presentation. ready.
No, yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can share the presentation.
Sure. Okay. So, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So, basically, this is a very recent, presentation we had made, wherein we had discussed about, the refining industry being at crossroads, and what is the route that refining industry needs to take here on, considering the imminent threats that we'll discuss about in this presentation. So, if you look at what is the reason, what are the reasons for petrochemicals, why to integrate into petrochemicals now? Why is it being mentioned? Why is it being said that refining industry is at crossroads? It is because global liquids consumption of fuels, which has been growing at about 1.4% over 2010 to 2019. The future growth of the next decade would be just about half of that. So there is a slowdown in the consumption of fuels as vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient because governments are increasing new standards for vehicles, are tightening standards for new vehicles. Obviously, there is a much talked about increasing, threat from hybrid and electric vehicles, which would, sort of displace gasoline and diesel demand altogether. Besides this, new fuels such as compressed and liquid natural gas, LPG, hydrogen and biofuels are replacing conventional fuels. The Indian government also has, mandated 20% ethanol blending by 2025, which was earlier 2030. And lastly, there is also a huge biofuel mandate, clean fuel adoption incentives, and outright bans in several countries on, internal combustion engines. That has already been rolled out in many, many European countries for some future date, for example, 2025 for Netherlands and so on. So these all would impact the conventional fuel demand. So what are the these are the imperatives for petrochemicals, but what do we gain? What are the pros and cons of integration with petrochemicals? So the pros are that historically we have seen that growth rates for petrochemicals are much higher than refined products. And there would be a smoothing of earnings as businesses operate on different cycles. The refining industry has a different supply-demand dynamic, and petrochemicals a different supply-demand dynamic. So there's a smoothing of earnings and cycles over these two different industries. Operating margins of petrochemicals are also historically been higher than refining. And the reason for that is also that, the demand for petrochemicals is underpinned by the strong, the difficult to find alternatives. So that underpins a strong demand of petrochemicals. We don't have many, economical alternatives to most of the petrochemicals that we use. So that is the reason, unlike fuels where electrification is going to, replace a lot of fuels, and so as biofuels, the CNG, as of now, petrochemicals are still hard to replace. Additionally, naphtha surplus would continue to increase as demand for gasoline would wane, and owing to electrification of transport. This would also be mainly probably this demand growth would come, or this destruction of gasoline demand would be much higher in countries in the developed market first in China, but would eventually catch up over the next 10 years with India as well. On the other hand, if you look at the cons, some of the cons are, the high capital intensity and the project execution risks. Petrochemical plants do take about 30,000 crores investment. For example, the HMEL plant is coming up at a capex of about 24,000 crores. Also here, different marketing networks and customization for customers are required through technical services for petrochemicals. We see that grade improvements have to be done. Grades have to be tailor-made to suit certain specific requirements. So that kind of marketing effort and customization would need to be done by the refining and marketing companies. Additionally, feedstock competitiveness issues are also there for few products. We still remain a very large importer of many feedstocks, and running into 2 million tons for products like acetic acid and so on, and PVC, etc. And obviously there is intense import competition, which requires duty protection in some instances. So coming to the moving on to the degrees of the petrochemical refining integration, there are basically 3 generations that we see that have been there. One is the first generation, which led to a conversion or yield of about 15 to 20% of petrochemicals, and there are several instances of this out there. So Reliance and most domestic refineries are yet to achieve this level of chemical yield. Our refineries have traditionally focused more on the meeting the fuel demand. We see that the margin uplift could be as high as $2 to $4 per barrel of crude processed. If we come to the current, cutting edge development or in this field, we see that the second generation is now, operational in many, at some sites. The most popular of them being Hengli of China, where, this particular refinery has a yield of about 46.2%, I believe, and the conversion here is up to from 40 to 45%. The margin uplift is $7 to $10 per barrel. However, despite these healthy margins, adequate returns may still also be a challenge due to the very high capex intensity. For example, the Hengli complex that I am mentioning has a capex of around $20 billion. It's reported to have a capex of about $20 billion. The third generation, and which is up to a percentage of about yield of about 70%, conversion of about 70%. There is no asset as of now, but some assets are being talked about. Famously, the SABIC Saudi Aramco asset that is being planned in Saudi Arabia. This would be the ideal guide path for a number of refineries, but the development of these technologies to some extent is still in progress and remains a WIP. So this is a schematic of the integrated, refinery come petrochemical complex. I'm sorry, I moved a slide further. Yeah, so we see that a lot of, there are a lot of
yeah, it's probably your slide is not getting changed and voice is also not clear.
Sir, 1 second.
Yeah, now it's.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. But
Yes, sir, you're audible. Now slide is also moving.
Okay,
Fine.
okay, thank you. So, sir, so basically, as picking up from where I was, so refinery can be broadly integrated into 2 sets of petrochemicals. One is the aromatic complex, which will yield, the BTX, that is benzene, toluene, and xylenes. And this can further be integrated into, PTA, paraxylene, PTA, etc. And the other route is a steam cracker, which would be basically would be fed by gas oil and naphtha, which would yield ethylene, propylene, butadiene, which can be further processed into polyethylenes, MEG, and so on and so forth. So moving on, Yeah. Yeah. So, what is the current refinery petrochemical integration? If we look at the typical barrel that we have shown on the left panel, typically what we see is steam cracker yields vary according to the the right panel on your right, the graphic on the right, wherein what we see is more and more heavier feeds are also being fed into the steam cracker, where the yield of ethylene may be somewhat compromised, somewhat lower, but you have many other products like butadiene and others which could and also yields of ethylene and propylene. So if you look at ethane and LPG, the steam cracker yield of, if you look at ethylene, could be as high as 40 to 80%. But as we move down to gas oil and naphtha, the ethylene and propylene yields drop from to about 20 to 30%. So are seeing that heavier and heavier feed streams are being pushed into the steam cracker. For example, the HMEL cracker that I talked about is now also being, one of the feed streams is also gas oil. And I believe among the first in the country to be fed with this heavier stream. Moving on to maximize the conversion of to petrochemical light and middle distillates are fed into the steam cracker. Currently, though the imminent the threat of ETF to the electrification of the threat from electrification is not there so much for ETF streams. So in order to maximize conversion, the other streams such as gas oil, naphtha, LPG, etc., are being fed into the cracker. So this is a schematic again of various end products that we can have from the earlier aromatics and steam cracker feeds that the refineries come petrochemical integration that we saw. And you could have various products like PE, PET, nylon, phenols, styrene, polypropylene, vinyl acetate, and so on and so forth with these two integrations. So now one more question that is pertinent is, what is the kind of value that we are generating here? What do we, we talked about some numbers, 2 to 4 for, the first generation and 7 to 8, but where does this flow from? And what are the other benefits that we get? So one of the key benefits that we get is the flexibility to change products as market demand and price dynamics change. That is one, and the other is the upgrade. We get the ability to upgrade low-value refinery streams to high-value products. As I mentioned in one of my earlier slides, there are a number of products, number of refinery streams. Due to a better integration, the technology people will tell you that you can get as the benefit of as high as about 20 to 25% in the improvement in economics. This from a standalone petrochemical plant to a refinery cum petrochemical integration plant. So that optimization benefit of capex, opex, and shared streams is also leads to substantial benefit in the for a refinery cum petrochemical complex. So moving on, what is the value addition? Again, coming back to the value addition. Now, this is the spreads over Dubai crude for the and their past 10-year average. So we see that the value addition for traditional fuels like gasoline, jet kero, gas oil, fuel oil is much lower as compared to some of the petrochemical streams like ethylene, propylene, benzene, toluene, and paraxylene. So this has been done over various cycles, over a 10-year period, over an average of that. And we see that the refinery integrated into a petrochemical would lead to substantial improvement in the value add as well. Obviously, this is at a definite cost because of the high capital intensity required for refinery petrochemical integration. Key refinery petrochemical plants that are coming up in India, as I mentioned, HMEL, which is putting up an ethylene multi-feed cracker. HPCL Rajasthan Refinery, which is putting up a ethylene multi-feed cracker. IOC Paradeep, which is which is expanding, which is putting up a PXPT and an MEG plant. BPCL Kochi, almost at the end of execution of this acrylic acid oxo alcohols. Similarly, IOCL Koyali refinery, which has recently announced its integration project of polypropylene, acrylics, and oxo alcohols. And Niara Energy is also setting up or planning to set up a ethylene multi-feed cracker and expansion of its PP facility. However, ICRA expects a number of new refinery and petrochemical projects to be announced over the near to medium term in India, with a number of refineries and companies looking at some of these projects, some of them being, Haldia Petrochemicals, IOC, Paradeep as well, and so on and so forth. So that's all I had in this presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now, whether Bhavana, this Mr. Bipin Gupta has.
Mr. Bipin Gupta is not able to join, Dr. Saab.
Okay, and so how about Saurabh Gupta?
Sir, Gaurav is here.
I'm sorry, Gaurav. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you,
Gaurav, floor is yours. So
yes,
you can make the deliberation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for providing me this opportunity to speak today. So I'll also present something what we are discussing with our clients nowadays, that how this petrochemical industry is changing and what is the future of this industry. I'm just presenting my screen.
Yeah.
Sir, is it visible now to everyone?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Great. Thank you. Just to provide you the glimpse of how India is doing as economy. So India is growing at a very fast pace in terms of GDP, and in the last 20 years also it has grown at about a healthy growth rate of about 7%. And as per PwC analysis, taking into consideration the COVID impact as well, we are expecting that Indian economy will grow by 8% in the next 5 years. And we have also highlighted some of the forecasts presented by IMF, World Bank, RBI, Goldman Sachs, and all of them are projecting the same numbers. Every this world-renowned organizations, they are expecting that Indian economy will grow by 8 to 9% on an average. So in short, India remains an oasis for growth amongst slowing global outlook and is in the post-pandemic world as well. And apart from that, India is emerging as an attractive and durable investment destination. In FDIs, 100% FDI is allowed in manufacturing now. About $473 billion has been invested in India since 2010, 60% of which was since 2015. Ease of doing business ranking has improved by 79 places since 2014. We are now 63rd in 2019. Major labor reforms have been implemented to improve the ease of doing business. Our global innovation index has improved by 9 places since 2018, and we are now 48th in 2020. Even in startup culture, we are now the second largest startup nation. There are about more than 20,000 startups in our country operating right now. Large base of entrepreneurs, ranked third in number of new firms created. Infrastructure and logistics is one of the key areas where government is spending a lot. Almost $1.4 trillion infrastructure project pipeline is expected to be completed by 2025. World Bank's Logistics Performance Index has also improved 10 places since 2014, and we are now 44th in 2018. Our corporate income tax has improved. It is 22% for existing companies and 14% for new manufacturing companies, and which is one of the growth drivers for many companies to come and invest in India. And manufacturing has always been a growth story for our country. We are, as I said, one of the top 10 FDI destinations in the world, 6th among the top manufacturing countries, 1st among greenfield FDI destinations in the world. There are more than 63 million registered mids, and small scale industries in India, 7th most value nation brand in the world, and most competitive economy in the Southeast Asia. We are the 2nd largest producers of steel, 3rd largest producers of pharmaceutical, 4th largest producers of chemicals in Asia, 4th largest automotive producers by volume, and 5th largest exporter of textiles. And all these industries, allied industries where petrochemicals and specialty chemicals goes into a large demand. So these are the reasons why chemical industry is prospering. Chemical industry contributes to 8.8% to the manufacturing sector GVA. Indian chemical industry is huge and it covers about 80,000 products, which are directly part of our daily life. It employs 2 million people in India. It contributes to 3% of the global chemical sales. We are 6th in the world and 4th in Asia for chemical sales. We are the 3rd largest consumers of polymers globally and 4th largest producers of agrochemicals globally. As well as in dyes, we are the 2nd largest manufacturer and exporters. And our chemical industry contributes to about 1.4% of the national GVA and weights about 7.87% on IIP. We also contributes to 2.1% of the total FDI inflows and contributes 11% in India's exports as well. Considering all these factors, Indian chemical industry is poised to reach about $300 billion by 2025. At this stage, India is right now at $178 billion. And considering its business as usual growth, it will reach at about $230 billion by 2025. But if we take the pre-COVID scenario and growth is, if it remains the same, then industry will reach about $278 billion and will grow at a CAGR of 9.3%. But if we take the high output business growth, which is the target which Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers have taken, and even industries targeting that, then our industry could reach $300 billion by 2025 and will grow at about 11% CAGR. And what are the chemical segments growing? So bulk chemical is the major. It contributes about 25% to the overall chemical industry. Then is specialty chemicals, followed by petrochemicals, 19%, agrochemicals and fertilizers, 15%. And there are some other industries like API, pharmaceutical, fine chemicals, which constitutes about 20%. How and why chemical industry is growing is one of the reasons that demand capacity gap is providing attractive business opportunities. So there are certain chemicals, if you see above the line, which are in excess, which could be in excess supply. If all the firm and speculative capacities will come online, then India could be a net exporter in polypropylene, HDP, LLDP, phenol, ethylene oxides, butadiene rubbers. But still in large intermediates and specialty chemicals, we will be net deficit, like EDC, PVC value chains, styrene value chains, methanol, glycols, acrylonitriles, then styrene butadiene rubber. And there has been several challenges because why these are in deficit. There are presence of limited players in acetic acid value chains, styrene value chains, and PVC value chains, which offers significant large opportunities. There are opportunities expected in and plants are coming up in EDC, VCM, and PVC value chain. And also there are sometimes company face challenges in terms of technology and feedstock, which constitute, which we think will remain a challenge for some of the producers like methanol and acetic acid. Some of the major petrochemical projects under implementation. So about $27.5 billion investments are under implementation in India. And some key investments are HMEL Bathinda, where $2.6 billion PP and HDP plant is coming up. GAIL Pata, they are putting up polypropylene plant. JBF Mangalore, they have announced the plan to put up a PTA plant. Chemplast, Cuddalore, PVC investments they are doing. BPCL Kochi, as my earlier speaker indicated, that they're going to put up propylene oxides, polyols, propylene glycol. GAIL, they are putting a PDH-based polypropylene plant. Naira Energy, they are expanding their train 2 and getting into the petrochemicals, polypropylene, polyethylenes, and MEG, LAB. And Apcotex, they are putting up nitrile butadiene rubber and nitrile latex plant in Gujarat. And apart from this, about $73 billion petrochemical projects are in the planning stage, which constitutes HPCL Barmer refinery, which is expected to come by 2023, GAIL Opal Dahej project, Bhansali Engineering Dahej project, Reliance Jamnagar expansions, West Coast Refinery, BPCL Raigad Maharashtra, Haldia Petrochemicals, Odisha investment, and in investments in West Bengal, and Indian Oil investments in Panipat, in styrene, butadiene rubber especially. What factors promotes India's manufacturing competitiveness? So some of the very good initiatives which has been taken by government and which is driving the growth of this petrochemicals and manufacturing industry in India. So first is good governance, political stable with good political and trade relations with leading markets. There are development councils and advisory forums, redressal of public grievances and challenges, high quality infrastructure, development of 5 industrial corridors for integrated industrial developments, commitment of USD $1.5 trillion as a part of this NIP. And also government is focusing a lot on development of downstream industrial parks as well as PCPIRs. There are about 3,382 industrial parks across 0.475 million hectares land is expected to come. There are some robust investment policies like Make in India, about $357 billion in FDI till 2019-2020, since launch in 2013-14, 100% FDI permitted through automatic route. PLI scheme has been implemented for about 12 sectors, attracting incentives and cashback benefits. Strong regulatory and tax framework. Industrial licensing has been abolished for most of the subsectors except in hazardous chemicals. Corporate tax rates have declined from 28 to 22% for existing companies and 15% for new manufacturing companies. Quality labor at competitive cost. So India is one of the most competitive economies, and our labor wages are also very competitive, which range from $60 to $258 per month. There are some skill development programs launched by NSDS and NSDC schemes. And government is also trying to standardize wages, bonuses, trainings, social security benefits for workers. And most important factor is domestic demand. The large and inspirational Indian middle class provides a readily available market. We are expected to become third largest consumer market by 2025. And 25 cities in India are among the world's top 100 fastest growing cities. So these are some of the factors which are promoting India's manufacturing competitiveness. And also there are some policy initiatives which are acting as game changers for Indian chemicals and petrochemicals industry. For example, in local manufacturing, exports and innovation, revised custom duties on chemicals and petrochemicals, which was there in the budget 2021-22. Public procurement policies for a total 65 petrochemical and chemicals, export promotion schemes and FTAs, global intellectual property treaties, Center of Excellence and national awards. On industrial infrastructure, as I said, government is looking to set up plastic parks. They are funding about 50% of the cost of the projects. Government is looking to develop textile parks as well. National infrastructure pipeline schemes, proposed PCPR projects for NIP, Odisha and Gujarat, and mega textile parks. Also, skilled manpower and labor laws. So we have already discussed about it in the last slide. And governance and clearances, one of the most important points where foreign companies used to face challenges now has been simplified, reduced paperwork and faster clearance for project proposals, IP applications and port jobs. Development Council and Advisory Forum for redressal of public grievances and challenges, better trade intelligence, new 8-digit HS codes have been implemented. And for feedstock as well, which is one of the key challenges, reduction in basic custom duty on NAFTA, new additions to PCPR Barmer is there, and redrawn concept of PCPIRs. So size reduction and specific cluster integration has been focused now. Also, in terms of regulations going towards sustainability, there are BIS standards for imported and locally produced chemicals and petrochemicals. Chemical management and safety draft rules are getting published. So government is in discussion with the key stakeholders, and it is in parallel with REACH, which is followed across the world, especially by Europe. So India will have their own chemical management and safety draft rules as well. As I said about PLI scheme, so PLI scheme has been implemented for various tech sectors. Some of the sectors I have highlighted here, which has been the growth drivers for chemicals industry: electronics, white good, ACs, LEDs, specialty steels, textile products, food products, telecom, pharmaceutical, advanced chemistry cells, automobile, and solar PV modules. And there has been PLI scheme previously announced for domestic manufacturing of key starting materials, drug intermediates, and active pharmaceutical ingredients and medical devices as well, which are one of the reasons why there is an increase in demand for chemicals and petrochemicals, because most of the polymers, resins, fibers, APIs, paint, there goes into different sectors. And also government is pushing to diversify manufacturing industry into the downstream industry and getting closer to the consumers. So that's why it will help chemical industry as well. India's ease of doing business ranking, as I said, it has improved a lot. We were 142 in 2014, and within 5 years, we reached the rank of 63. And what are the initiatives which has helped to achieve this ranking? One is the process, single form for company formation, fast track approval for construction permits, PRAID Indian Custom Single Window project implemented, commercial courts and appellate division of high courts established, and insolvency and bankruptcy code 2016 for resolving insolvencies has been implemented, which has helped India in improving its ease of doing business ranking and improving some of the parameters like getting credit, trading across borders, resolving insolvency, and getting electricity. So where industry is moving? So industry is moving in the right direction. It is the time to invest in India. There is to seize the opportunity to establish India as a leading chemicals and petrochemicals manufacturing hub. There is a thrust on reduction in import dependency. Government is working on this. We ourselves are doing a project on reduction in import dependency in India by attracting investment for manufacturing quality products, by using cutting edge technologies. So technology is very important. We need technology to produce intermediates and specialty chemicals and produce some functional chemicals. Clusters needs to be created. The cluster approach needs to be adopted. There should be focus on sustainability, especially on circular economy, plastic recycling. That could be the future of India and contribute to about $200 billion to manufacturing sector, and help India to reach about 5 trillion in Indian economy by 2025. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. So, Bhavana, do we have the Mr. Gupta?
Sir, he's unable to join, so.
Acha, he's not able to join. So now, floor is open for the question answer session. So if any of the members has any question, like Bhavana, how do we do with the chat or?
So there are some in the chat box.
Okay,
And,
Acha, if there, if you can.
And so, I mean, you can read a few.
Yeah, just I see only one question here.
Yes, sir.
What developments are taking place for biodegradable plastics? So this may be, I mean, three of you can address. So probably to start with Gaurav, probably.
Sir, in biodegradable plastics, currently companies are working, especially Reliance, Indian Oil and others. They have started to work on plastic recycling. We have chats with some of the large petrochemical companies as well, and letting them know that there could be a potential for plastics recycling, and you can focus especially on recycling and improve your norms. So Dow Chemicals, they have implemented one program. Tata Chemicals have implemented some of the programs. Can you give me 2 minutes and I can let you know what the details of those programs as well?
Yeah, sure.
In the meanwhile, if would be good if someone would like to take it up.
Yeah, I think Pavneja, you'd like to take this, I mean, put your viewpoint. You can unmute yourself.
In fact, biodegradable plastics, yes, they are still at developmental stage. And of course, some of the companies have already come up with their product, but not on a very large commercial scale. What basically is more promising here nowadays is the recycling part of it. As we see, there is a lot of scope in recycling that plastic and that recycling potential, what is being seen in the next, by next 2040 is about 8 to 10 million metric ton per annum. So it is going to give a huge impact on overall production of polymers. If the demand deficit is about 55, out of 55, we can, by 2040, we can say about 10 would be met by this recycling kind of thing. And that recycling, of course, in India is already happening, taking place, but it still requires restructuring in terms of whole value chain. It requires restructuring at collection level, that proper segregation, and then kind of conversion of collected material into a suitable pallet shape. That's to with a defined quality. And that quality definition is yet to be streamlined in a way that it's also require a certification kind of thing, the way we do certification for virgin product, so that OEM can also utilize this kind of material. So efforts are going on in this field, and we'll see good results in coming years regarding recycling.
Yeah, just to add it on recycling, recently, I mean, in last couple of months, Indian Oil has demonstrated a process in existing refinery. You can co-process with hydrocarbon and then convert it to the fuel to the extent of 95%. So it has been demonstrated in an operating refinery where 95% of these, I mean, very difficult to use plastic like MLP, multi-layer plastics was processed and fuels was converted. Anyway, coming to the next question by S. Rajendran, with the world moving to green, how will gas and oil sector reinvest itself to the relevant? Huge investments are made already. Worried if they will go waste? I think straight away question goes to Prashant.
Sir, thank you. Sir, what we see is that I'm from a chemical engineering background. I worked in refinery design for a good part of my career of 13 years. And I was with Engineers India Limited Process Department. I've designed refineries also for IOC, including the Gujarat refinery.
Okay.
And so buzzword these days is the repurposing of the refinery asset. What the Shells and the the Lumbers of the world and the UOPs of the world are more and more engaging with these companies, the refining companies, are how do you repurpose the existing refinery to increase the yields of petrochemicals from the same assets, from the same FCC, if you may. And so that is the buzzword. And see, if you look at the Indian scenario, the battery costs where they are today, it will take a long time to really be adopted on a mass scale. That is to say that currently, if the battery costs are about $100 or slightly more than that, $110 per kWh, the mass conversion could happen in developing markets for which India is the representative, or a kind of microcosm. It would be about the late 2020s. So we still have 15 years of good growth in our refining fuels. So these assets in India are not likely to be go waste very soon, if that is your worry. And besides this, as we can see that a lot of these companies, although refining companies are already taking action to move towards increasing the petrochemical intensity, as well as repurposing some of the existing assets to increase the petrochemical production within their existing, without putting up new plants, for example, by changing the catalyst or some operating conditions and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's my answer.
No, that's true. I mean, just to add, like all effort, I mean, energy mix will continue for at least 2040 or 2050. Only thing is that conversions of crude to the fuels, that will be less. And that's what petrochemical intensity, I mean, very rightly Prashant and Gaurav and Sanjay Papneja. So they have mentioned that worldwide, how we are moving from 10 to 15% to go to current level of Hengley, like a 40 to 45%. And future, lots of development happening in the country and abroad, like we can go up to 70%. So thereby, like a fuel will be diverted to the chemicals and petrochemicals. And FCC, that fluid catalytic cracking process, is one of the process which will convert this chemical to the petrochemical. And like Indian Oil is also having this INDMAX process, which can convert on the feed basis, like about like a 30%. I mean, it can convert to the ethylene and propylene. So that type of conversions will come, and lots of new process and integrations will happen. So investment will not go waste, but diversions, flexibility, that's the key, and that will be taking in all revamp projects going on in across all refineries in India. Yeah, coming to the next question, life cycle assessment of plastics. So Gaurav or Sanjay, I mean, you mentioned that recycling of plastic, I think partly it is covered. So
Right, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, just to answer this question, that it is very important. Life cycle assessment is one of the most appropriate methods for analyzing the environmental impact of a plastic products. So in context of circular economy, sustainability, it is very important for companies to evaluate the life cycle of plastic products, because this is the future. And considering the trends industries following, the changes in customer behavior, technological breakthrough, climate change and resource scarcity, there has been need of the hour to companies to do the life cycle assessment of plastics and to understand what does this mean for business.
Yeah. Now going to the next question, Bhagirathi Sahu, he is asking actually, what are the actions being taken to rule out any delay for any integrated refinery or petrochemical complex? Many refinery projects are taking longer time for completion. So both Prashant and Gaurav.
Sir, I'll go at this first. I believe, many refinery projects are taking longer for completion is not true anymore, actually. If you see the refinery projects being done now, HMEL had a very ambitious target of 1 year ahead of completion of their of this petrochemical complex, and with now this kind of monitoring by very high levels in the government also, actually refinery projects are more. I mean, once they start, that is obviously there could be land related issues and all that, but once you hit the ground, I mean, once you start the refinery project. A lot of these we are finding are actually being completed well within time. Despite this COVID impact, the HMEL plant is still slated for completion only slightly earlier than what they had initially estimated. So a lot of emphasis on direct monitoring by a lot of high levels of the government, a lot of buy-in, or shall I say coordination with the licensing with the local state governments and all. I don't think we are seeing the kind of delays in project completion that we used to see earlier once the project takes off, that is. Rule out any delay in integration. As I said, a lot of refineries and are already looking at setting up petrochemical integrations. Obviously, India would not be very hit early, because, as I mentioned earlier, the mass conversion or the decline in battery costs are expected to hit developing countries like India only by the late 2020s. But even then, a lot of integration is being looked at by all the OMCs and all the refining companies. They are actively working with a lot of these technology licensor companies behind the scenes, which people like you and I may not know immediately. I mean, it may not be reported very quickly to the press and all that, but a lot of these companies are extremely cognizant of this, shift in the refining fuels, and are moving towards working out plans of, integration into downstream petrochemicals also. Yeah, over to you, Gaurav.
Yeah, Gaurav. Yeah. So, sir, there has, as you mentioned, so companies are taking a lot of steps for successful project execution to avoid the cost overrun and make sure that projects are completed on time. So in the pre-planning stage, especially investments in pre-planning, DFRs, PMO, advanced regulatory approvals, embedding collaborative and agile planning methods in design and engineering, modularization, mechanization, pre-casting, prefabrications to improve safety, review of 3D models, drawings, two-stage bidding processes are introduced, robust contract evaluation processes are now being implemented where quality and costs are considered. Procurements are done on a very agile methods, procurement on group basis to reduce vendor interface, direct shipping of materials, and robot process for settlement of claims. Similarly, in construction and commissioning, use of fireproof paint over vermiculite, formation of commissioning tanks force to ensure quality and completion of works. And similarly, in project management also and technology implementation, there are certain steps like digital tools for contract management, RFID tags for material tracing, well-defined risk registers, mitigation measures, extensive review of project documents. So all these process and factors are being currently followed by all the major oil and gas companies in India, and companies are trying to avoid cost overruns and schedule overruns and want to achieve successful project execution. HPCL is one of the examples. BPCL has achieved this on time. IOCL always run its projects on time, whatever the timeline commits, because they follow these methodologies in a very significant way.
Yeah. Yeah. Next question is from Kirtan. Question to Sanjay Papneja. What are views of IOCL on pursuing second generation petrochemical integrated plant? When can we see the first investment committed on such plants?
If we see that petrochemical integration point of view, that just to add on for earlier question also, like what is happening with respect to petrochemical complexes, I would just like to mention that under the leadership of DCPC, that all major refiners have already joined hands together to conclude on India Perspective Plan 2040, in which already the demand supply deficit of major petrochemicals, top 50 or top 80 petrochemical have been identified, and as as has already been mentioned by all speakers, that India is a place where most of the petrochemicals are under deficit and a lot of scope is there for going in for new projects. So that India Perspective Plan 2040 is under finalization, and wherein that all available feedstock at national level is being identified so that it can be suitably utilized for conversion to petrochemical. Now coming to that pursuing second generation petrochemical integrated plant, see, per se, Indian Oil, of course, our basic objective so far had been to meet the energy security of India, and we had been working on along with that line. Now, already we have refinery in place all over India, 9 refinery already in operations. Now, of course, we need to de-risk our business from fuel considering the current business scenario. So that is also being actively pursued. And as has been also indicated by Mr. Vashish in his presentation, that while conceptualizing a particular project, although there could be a demand supply deficit, but whole feasibility analysis carried out based on availability of feedstock and the market value of the product, and then based on that minimum return being ensured by the project, integrations are being proposed. So that study is already ongoing, and based on those study only, we have mentioned that we have already approved plans in terms of about 32,000 crores, which will add about 2.7 MMTPA of petrochemical for Indian oil product basket. And if we see the industry perspective, we have already 5 MMTPA of capacity already under execution with a capex of worth 60,000 crores. So in spite of COVID impact and all, we have firm capacity addition plan in place. And apart from that 5 MMTPA, we can say about another 3 MMTPA capacity that is worth 35,000 crore that is under approved status and which will go under education shortly. So that way we have firm plans in terms of adding petrochemical intensity. Now with respect to second generation or maybe the kind of integration, desired integration, 10% or 25 or 40, whatever. It will all depend on the feasibility of that process. And based on that feasibility, we pick up our plan, we finalize our plan and move ahead. So a lot of plans are in place, which will be shortly.
Yeah. Yeah, next question, I think question is not very clear. Question is like, do you provide information on carbon content of plastics or petrochemical? I mean, its carbon content comes from a stoichiometry, basically. So question was not very clear. But anyway, Prakash, I mean, you can write it to me afterwards so that, I mean, I can address you that. Next question is from Vijay. He is asking how circular economy is being achieved for new petrochemical plants. Is it taken care in design aspects, recycling feedstock, etc.? Yeah, maybe Gaurav and Prashant and Papneja also, because 3 of you are involved. I mean, mostly Papneja and Gaurav are involved in the design, but Prashant has done design, lots of design. So 3 of you can answer.
Yeah. Actually, that recycling feedstock, if Mr. Vijay Akash can clarify what exactly he is looking at from recycling feedstock point of view. But of course, I mean, plants are designed to such a extent that maximum conversion is ensured by the designer or the licensor of that particular plant. And if you talk of circular economy, then of course, as we have indicated initially, that a lot of initiatives are already in place with regard to recycling, and we'll see the result of those initiatives in coming years. And certainly that efforts are going on to structure this recycling process, whole recycling process, which start from collection to segregation to quality certification to finally supplying that material to customers. So that whole cycle is being worked upon.
Yeah. I think earlier this point was also deliberated initially, that how yeah.
Like one more point can be I mean, apart from recycling, normal recycling, which is just to melt the collected waste and then convert into pellet. Some efforts are also going on chemical level recycling. Though yet that is yet to be concluded, but efforts are already going on. Even in Indian Oil R&D, some efforts are already in place to go for chemical level recycling.
Right, sir. And also,
Yeah, Gaurav, yeah. Go ahead.
answering your question, how circular economy is being achieved for new petrochemical plants, I would say not new, majorly it is done for all petrochemical plants. For new petrochemicals, what companies can do, they can create an ecosystem with the recyclers who can be at the consumer side or at the production side. Majorly should be at the production side, and collect the waste product from the consumer and bring it to the site and get it back into the system with the help of the producer. So what companies are also doing, in spite of only producing this, there has been certain elements of circular business model, which starts with responsible sourcing, which means whatever products you are sourcing, it should be recycled label so that it can be further processed accordingly. Efficient manufacturing, logistics optimization, maximization of product use, end of life cycle recycling, and focusing on reverse logistics. So all these aspects, when brought together, it closes the loop and constitutes the circular business model. So, and there are companies which are already doing it in India. As I said, Dow has started doing it. Dow has now formed a cloud-based solution for waste management recycling. Recycle, they're calling it RECYKAL, where Dow has collaborated with the government and local asphalt plants in India to transform 100 tons of collected plastic waste into 40 kilometers of roads. So this initiative will divert plastic from landfills and give the plastic a second life that will like to remain for longer use. They have collaborated with waste aggregators, waste processors, recyclers, road contractors, and that's how they are creating this program. They are calling it Digital Plastic Waste Management Program, Recycle.
Yeah, I think I can see one more question from Rohit Ahuja. Do all the refineries of OMCs, including IOCL, would undergo petrochem integration? That's this question. Second is that, is this the future capex focus to increase chemical conversion, considering threat from EVs on downstream refining product demand? So, Prashant, Gaurav, and I mean, three of you, and I will also add at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, if you see that we are working on almost all the refineries, and we are optimizing our availability of fuel, and whatever spare molecules are there, which can be converted to petrochemical, are being very rigorously identified. And if you can see that we have already firm plan in place to add petrochemical to most of the refineries. Panipat already having a very good integration, going close to 15%. Paradip, we already have integration with refinery to produce polypropylene, PTA, MEG. Then many refineries are under execution of adding polypropylene units like Barauni refinery, Gujarat refinery. So at all refinery, it is being that available molecules have been scouted, and wherever possible, integration is taking place. And as far as threat from EV is concerned, of course, it is leading to lower growth rate for this fuel, but it is not leading to a negative growth rate for this existing fuel also. So this existing quantum of fuel is to be maintained. Rather, there is some indicated a positive growth even for conventional fuel also, in spite of EV coming in picture. And if you see that conversion, if you see the total landscape of Indian automobile sector, then probably it will take many years for a whole large a segment of EV to cover the existing fleet of vehicles. So accordingly, those things have been identified, and a reduction in fuel and increase in petrochemical is planned accordingly, and it is taking place.
Yeah. Yeah, Prashant and Gaurav like to add?
Sir, broadly, I think the question is focused on IOC. So see, IOC
Speaking
will
about, I mean, including IOCL, any OMC, is this the threat perception of EVs? So that's what like people going for the crude to chemicals? That's the question.
Yeah. So broadly, sir, the lines of thinking are those, because EVs can really decimate the market, but though it may be slower in India. And all these companies are looking at, a lot of these companies are looking at refinery petrochem integration projects. The statistic is that, India needs one naphtha cracker every year, or every, this is often, statistic that is quoted. So the growth rates, as Gaurav also pointed out, are very, very healthy in 2 digits for the commodity polymers and plastics and chemicals. And there is definitely a lot of scope for absorption, because we are also, what we must remember is that our per capita consumption of plastics are also very low right now. Our per capita consumption of chemicals remains very low. Besides which, we are also becoming an increasingly export destination, with a lot of China plus one, orders coming to us from the global, supply chains shifting, focus from China a little bit towards India because of the COVID scenario and geopolitical issues. So a lot of these refineries are looking at these conversion, considering the imminent threat of the conversion of EVs.
Yeah. Next question is that what happens to lube oil slate with EV coming up? So, I mean, probably I'll take this question, or someone of you like to take up this question?
So you can go first, I'll go later.
Okay. So, you know that lube oil, see, there are various grades of the lube oil. I mean, in the vehicle, in the manufacturing, like automatic lube oil is one part of that. So number one is that, I mean, your question will be more relevant when suppose 100% fuel gets converted to the EV. But in that scenario also, lube oil market with the other segments, like transformer oil, and then lots of like specialty products we get it. So drilling fluids and other things. So those will be in any case will be the remaining. So only that's what, I mean, we started with the theme is that your flexibility refinery today, whatever you are making the units and available unit or integration, it need to have a flexibility. And lots of, you will see in the days to come, lots of new value-added products will be coming in the market. So those products earlier, we are importing those products, but those products can be made easily from this fuel, what we are producing in the refinery today. So you need not to be worried about that lube oil demands won't be there in India. I mean, for your information, today, almost 2/3 of the oils, lube oil we are importing today. And even in 2030, still we'll have a deficit of at least more than 2 million metric ton of lube oil demand in India. Yeah, Prashant, you might add.
Sir, I was going to add just one small statistic to that. About 20% of the lube oil goes into PVs and the two-wheelers. And that those are the two sectors those are the two consumers that will get impacted by EVs. The balance goes into the CVs, which are more hard to electrify, especially the heavy and medium and heavy commercial vehicles. And the others are industrial, and about 15 to 20% of that segment is the greases and the brake fluid, brake oils, and so on and so forth, which would in any case be required in EVs also. So that is the segment that will eventually is facing a threat. So but the balance 80% that the current lube oil is covered under lube oils is still not under the threat of EVs so much.
Yeah, and one is that metal working oil. That's also quite good segment is there. Yeah. I think I don't see any more questions. I covered all the questions. So, Dr. Singh, I think.
Yeah, Dr. Madhusudan, I think
now I'll
you
wrap
have,
up.
yeah, you can give your final concluding remarks.
Yeah.
Just a summation.
Yeah. So probably we'll be completing quite early. No problem. I think it was a very exhaustive and highly deliberated session with our three, very eminent panelists. And I'll just start with, summarize each speaker's point of view. So Mr. Papneja, he has given full perspective of Indian Oil, how much petrochemical they are producing today, and in next like 4 or 5 years, so they will be almost adding to same quantity. They will go to 6 to 7 million metric ton of the petrochemical production. So PI, petrochemical intensity increase, is all projects of Indian Oil is being taking up. That's what he has mentioned. And then Mr. Prashant Vasisht has given a full spectrum of how in the world crude oil is getting converted to the petrochemicals in various configurations. He mentioned that Hengley's configurations where it's like olefins and aromatics. He also mentioned Saudi Aramco and then Reliance configuration. So whatever may be these configurations, so all cases people are following that crude oil will be doing the, carbon chain management such a way that we produce lots of olefins and lots of aromatics. And that's what it meets that our petrochemical need. And in the long run, today, like our plastic consumption is almost 1/3 in the world. So that big gap in the due course will be competing, we'll be filling that gap with these enhanced petrochemical productions from the refinery. And he has given a full perspective of India as well as outside, how much, dollars per barrel you can get it with respect to the conventional and current operation. Now, Gaurav from PwC, he has given a full spectrum of how that chemical industry's growth is happening in various scenarios, and that how it is coinciding with our, India's growth pattern and growth forecast. And he has also given a elaborative figures of like how much projects are going ahead today. Almost 27 billion projects are, running projects, and then about 73 billion projects are in the pipeline. And he has given also various factors by the government and other like different companies, how to boost the manufacturing sectors. And he has given a complete spectrum of even cutting edge technologies to have this higher, chemical industry growth. So with this, I think I thank all these three panelists here. And thanks, Dr. Jatinder Singh for giving me this opportunity to have this session.
Thank you, Dr. Saw, for such a wonderful moderation. In fact, most of the questions have been aptly covered in this discussion, and our distinguished panelists also, they did the justice by giving very straightforward answers without any jargons, and they were very, very convincing. So with this note, we conclude this session, and we are thankful to again Dr. Saab for moderating the session, Dr. Sahu, Mr. Sanjay Papneja, Mr. Gaurav Gupta, and Mr. Prashant Vasisht for taking out your valuable time from your busy schedule and being a part of this important session. We'll be coming out with some white paper on this topic. We will send our recommendations to you also for adding value to this, for enriching our paper, and we look forward to your continued presence in our future endeavors also. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Okay.